Hi, I'll be playing a very short clip from NBC Evening News, Friday Night News, October 2nd, 2020. This is the rebroadcast early morning Saturday. They're talking about Trump going to Walter Reed Hospital with COVID-19. They briefly mention the company Regeneron, and Regeneron has a clinical trial going on with a product that activates the antibodies, a person's own antibodies to help fight COVID-19. What's really important about this, and it just shows how it always seems to be up to Trump to lead the way, is this is a method for preventing coronavirus from doing more damage later on. In essence, it's like saying when the virus first enters the body, it's at its weakest. So if you fight it off then, you either may not get anything bad happen to you, or the bad effects will be minimized. Because whereas a lot of attention has been put on late stage COVID-19, meaning people on their deathbeds in the hospital, how can they save their lives? Which is great, but by then, what if those people could have been given something early on so they never got to that point? This is the discussion that has not been really a part of the news media over the last several months. And I think it's something that Trump kept trying to address at different times and was sort of attacked by the media regarding hydroxy and any other idea he would present as a starting point for discussion, he was attacked. It seemed like the media was focused more on the issue of vaccines or some new super drug that'll save the day at the last minute for people who are on their deathbeds. But it seems as if not as much attention was given to, well, when you get the first symptoms, what can we do then and there, right at that point? And NBC, just 24 hours ago, when they went live with the report that Donald Trump had coronavirus, they were very proud of the fact, and they kept saying it, well, Trump, now that you're in quarantine, there's nothing we can do for you. There's nothing that we can give you while you're in quarantine. And it really sounded hostile and like they were proud of that. And it gave them a chance to lecture Trump on not wearing a mask and not being respectful and this. But the reality is, Trump did the right thing just now. He's trying an experimental drug, which probably should have been fast-tracked by all the company that was creating it should have been supported so that they could fast-track their studies. Because to me, if you can detect coronavirus early and then give people a drug cocktail option that will just help the body's immune system fight it off, that means you've done everything right and you didn't even need the vaccine. And that's what Trump is actually in the midst of doing by going to Walter Reed. And I'm going to play a very short clip, and I'll just talk about it briefly afterwards.
The White House physician says the president received an infusion of Regeneron's antibody cocktail, an experimental drug intended to boost the body's immune response. The First Lady has a mild cough and headache. It's not clear how the president contracted the coronavirus or...
Now, they literally spent 10 seconds on the most important part of the story. Now they go on and on and on for minutes about who he contacted, who contacted Mr. Trump, President Trump, and they just go on and on about the big soap opera of all the contact, but they sped by the most important part. Regeneron, if it works, and Trump is basically agreeing to be an experimental. He's like agreeing to be, tested on, because the drug, although it had successful clinical trials, has not finished all of its clinical trials. The FDA has not approved it yet for mass distribution. So he got what's known as a compassionate use, where if this drug may work and it can help somebody, the FDA may allow its use. So that's great. But we have to wonder, why was there such an imbalance over the last 6 months? How come every time Donald Trump tried to bring up the discussion of what can we do to fight coronavirus early on? Because that's what his intent was all the time. Whereas the media and science was focused all the time on these ventilators and people who were dying and how to treat them, but they weren't. Where was the emphasis on these same people when they first got sick? Now, maybe early on they were unprepared, okay, and so maybe they saw them dying and they wanted to save them, and they became fixated on it. I get that. But that's putting all your eggs in one basket. Every time Trump brought up some other type of idea, he got shot down. And they even went so far that the clinical trial for hydroxy was done with hospital patients. Hospital patients mean they were on ventilators, basically. And then they gave them high doses, which you shouldn't do with hydroxy, especially if somebody's near death, because it can affect their heart. So then they condemned hydroxy by using it on patients who were critical. What they didn't do was do a study early on when somebody maybe just got sick, and hydroxy and zinc together. There was one clinical trial done with early stage patients, but it did not include zinc. So they condemned the president for his commenting about hydroxy without ever even doing one valid test. So then when he brought up the issue of bleach and injection and all that, they attacked him. When, in essence, they just injected him with something to activate his antibodies. And on top of that, for the skin and all that, Bell and Howell is a product now. It's a blue light that's supposed to kill coronavirus by the blue light. So he was right about that also. But everyone in the media and the White House reporters, all they want to do is attack him every moment. So now here he is 6 months later, and they want to blame him for not wearing a mask when what's really amazing is he has agreed to take a drug that is experimental. And that's really brave to do. Because it's his way of saying, look, I get that you're trying to save people when they're on their deathbed, and I get that you want to develop a vaccine, but what about all these people that are testing? And that's what his point was about testing. Why are we testing all these people if they're gonna come positive and then we don't do anything for them? That was his point. Was that, oh, you just go sit in quarantine for 14 days and we see if you get worse. And then once you get worse, we don't have anything for you other than maybe some very expensive drug to give you. So they were like, it's like the news media was covering up for Big Pharma and their reluctance to do more work on coming up with something when COVID-19 is just introduced into the body. And forget all this stuff about the masks and they're going to bring up the masks over and over. We should have been, the science should have been studying more and more, not only on what they could create to prevent coronavirus when it's first introduced into the body, but is it possible that there are even naturally occurring elements, food types people could have been eating, possibly aromatherapy, oxygen tents rather than masks, where with a mask you're basically breathing in and out the same junk that your body's trying to get rid of. I mean, there's a thing called coronavirus shedding, where the body's trying to shed the virus. And it seems like all the precautions being taken are done in a way where the person can't shed the virus. They can't exhale out the virus because they got a mask on. So this whole infatuation with the mask is really weird, because it would be okay if they were doing everything else, but they're not. No studies on naturally occurring foods like garlic, onion, peppers, no aromatherapy studies to see if that can help. They finally did one clinical trial where they discovered if people laid on their stomach, it helped them breathe easier. They never did this before for flu and pneumonia. They finally decided to do it this year. I don't even know if they're doing clinical trials on the benefits of just sitting in a chair rather than being in a bed all day. Because there are people who believe and know that if you're congested and you're always laying down, you may be doing more harm if you never sit up. And I'm not a doctor, I'm not telling you to do that. I'm just saying I know that's how my mother's life was saved once in a hospital setting when she had pneumonia, and the physical therapist came, so this isn't me, and said your mom needs to exercise. And I said, she's like Jello in the bed. And the physical therapist said to me, if you don't get her out of that bed, she may die today. And I was shocked. I go, well, but she can't walk. And she said to me, it doesn't matter. Just sitting in a chair is like exercise when somebody's that weak. And that helps the body remove congestion, gives them a little bit of strength. They can breathe a little easier if they can do it. So that's what we did. And my mom almost perked up within it took us 5 minutes to get her off the bed. She was like Jell-O. She only weighed like 85 to 90 pounds. She was like Jell-O. It took us 5 minutes to get her into the chair, but within 10 minutes, her head perked up. And within 15 minutes, she actually stood up, and by the 20th minute, she actually walked a few steps. It was like I watched a miracle. If she'd never gotten out of that bed that day, she probably would have died. So these are all things that could be part of a much broader treatment of COVID-19, and the media is not discussing it. And it's very scary. It's very scary. So I just wanted to point out that they rushed by the actual most important part of the story, which is Regeneron and their drug that may be able to excite the immune system to react quicker. That could be the biggest breakthrough of all, and it's getting very little airplay and incredible timing. They just had released a clinical trial study like 3 days ago. So it's pretty amazing, that they just released these positive results, and now Trump can benefit from it. So here's hoping that, all the hard work Donald Trump has done over the last few months trying to get more of a discussion about COVID-19 other than masks and a vaccine and a miracle drug. That's all he was trying to do, was expand the discussion in other areas, and now he's having to do it himself by taking an experimental drug. And I think he's a hero for that.